Welcome back to the working that is Chrononaut Chronicles. My name is Bill, and I will be your guide on this particular Sonic adventure. This show is, of course, sponsored by mysticalwares.com, which is Derek Condit's online store. He has a brick and mortar version of this. Oh, speaking of Derek, here he is. So we'll admit him, and we might start over since we might be able to broadcast now. So we'll just kind of hang out until
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. Sorry about being late.
No
I'm not
problem.
going to bore you with the drama. It's crazy running a physical store that's like this, is all I can really say.
I was just mentioning that you have a physical store. Wait, I guess I'd started the intro already or whatever. So, but we could start over if you wanted.
Oh, it makes no difference to me. I'm going to start broadcasting here in just moments.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll just keep rolling then. Just welcomed everybody to the show, and said that we're sponsored by mysticalwares.com, but that there is an actual brick and mortar store, which we'll hear more about in just a few minutes. I'm hoping Ben is joining us as well, so we'll keep rolling on, rolling, rolling, rolling right along here. Let's see. What is it that we exactly do here on Chrononaut Chronicles? Well, the show has been broken down into four sections, pretty much, starting with the Old Farmer's Almanac, which is just a brief overview of what is to come next week in relation to the planets and if we want to capitalize and work with any of that energy. So it's really just a quick glance at the future week to see what looks, what lies in store for us. But then the show really starts off with the gratitude segment, and this being a working, you can never have too much love in a spell, right? So we can never have too much gratitude, but the point of gratitude is to perpetuate this heart-brain coherence that we talk about so much on the show. And Adam and I have kind of come up with this segment from 13 questions, and it's kind of a holdover from that show. So we'll show gratitudes after the Old Farmer's Almanac, and then we move into the silver segment, which is more or less relatively newly rebranded, and the goal of this is to learn something new. So today, actually, we will be uh, covering the parts of the soul according to the Egyptians. I have a book by Robert M. Place for that, and along with some other stories, some storylines, guidelines, no storylines, headlines. There we go, some headlines, and lastly is the sword segment, and sword is a alluding to words, and this can be pretty much just summed up with being impeccable with your word. This is a segment all about thoughts and thinking and empowerment, really. So we'll be reading from Neville Goddard again today, Freedom for All, published in 1942. And this is the chapter on the Sabbath. Ooh, that was a mouthful. But yes, real quickly, Old Farmer's Almanac. Tuesday is really the only happening day this week. So tomorrow we've got the moon and Jupiter conjunct and the moon and Uranus conjunct. Interesting side note, Friday is the end of the dog days. Dog days of the summer are over officially on Friday, according to the Old Farmer's Almanac, at least. But enough of that. Let's get into gratitudes, and I'm going to jump right into Derek because he joined us just recently. So let's catch up with him. And what do you? So what's up? And what are you grateful for?
Yeah, welcome. Sorry for stepping a little bit late.
Problem.
It's I'm trying, and I don't know. I don't take notes of which gratitudes I've done over the different podcasts, but this one is going to be for synchronicities in my life that happen. Of course, we can call them breadcrumbs, but because they've just happened so often, um, that I just really I'm focusing on paying attention to them and following them wherever that trail leads me. So, and that sometimes, so this actually ties into people that and sometimes just customers, random people walking in the store, which is what just happened and held me up. But it was all good. It was one of those breadcrumbs or synchronicities in life that were meant to be, um, that led to something else. I'm just kind of keeping it vague for the segment right now. But so I guess, yeah, it'd be the synchronicities and then the people that bring them sometimes. So I'm grateful for as often as I can, because I miss them like anybody else, picking up on those things that happen. And the more I do focus and pay attention, the more they play out in a good way.
Absolutely. I love synchronicities. I've been having some moon synchronicities since we had our moon episode a while back. But there is a minor synchronicity. Speaking of past episodes, there's a minor synchronicity in the silver segment that has to do with one of the stories we covered in the last show. But we'll get into that later. I have two other chrononauts with me today, and let's go with Adam. Adam, what's up? What are you grateful for, man?
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning, yeah.
And hopefully everybody else out there is able to be thankful for that too. Otherwise, be thankful for free heat.
Free heat, yeah. One way to look at it. And I think Ben is here with us also. I think that there might have been some technical difficulties, but thanks for joining us, Ben. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me okay. I also followed some Beaver breadcrumbs and have now moved deeper into the mountains, into a little cabin,
Oh,
starting a new adventure. So the service is even worse than where I was before. It's farther away from everything else. So
you're a little choppy there, but I can understand you for the most part. We might have to send you like a Wi-Fi booster or something. I don't know if you're going to be out that far. Not a Wi-Fi, but I guess cell signal booster. But yeah, my gratitude for this episode is being able to go to the beach. So I know that Adam is down in Florida and go to the beach all the time, but up here in
Oh my
Michigan,
dude, I can't even remember the last time I went to the beach and
what?
lived within like
Can't
five
you
minutes
just
of it.
see it out your door or something, right?
No, I'm not that close to Russia, but I mean it's 5 or 10 minutes depending on traffic. Straight shot, all green lights, I can get to the beach in 5 minutes.
Oh man. So it takes me about an hour up here in Michigan, a little less than an hour, and then we get to the west coast of Lake Michigan, or the east coast, I'm sorry. And yeah, it's just nice to be able to have that available for, a short amount of time every year, right before it gets, dark and cold again. So,
Oh yeah, but dark and cold at the beach can be awesome too. You don't necessarily have to go swimming in the water.
no, 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 no. But it's nice to have a beach option for when it is not dark and cold. Gets you through.
I'm going to be honest, Bill. My favorite time to go to the beach is late at night and when it's cold out.
Oh yeah, in Florida, that makes sense. It's
I'm
just
kind of with you on
Oh
that.
yeah, I guess that. Yeah, I guess depending on the season for you, that might be a terrible idea. Just get
the
like ice face.
yeah, ice. The ice, it actually looks kind of cool when it's all frozen. You can walk out on it. Kind of terrifying. I've never done it before, but yeah, it's just nice having a little retreat that I can go to. It makes up for make like I said, just makes up for stuff. But yeah, there's just a little gratitude exercise pretty much we like to do every week, not for the sake of doing the exercise itself, but like I said, just to as a little reminder to help us continue to live in the heart brain field that we create for ourselves, hopefully every day, right? To by thinking of something that we're grateful for and getting in that gratitude state. And that's the point behind the gratitude segment. So the silver segment, oh yeah, we're actually going to learn something. So last episode I had mentioned before we get into the headlines. Last episode I mentioned that we're going to go over the parts of the soul in as in according to the Egyptians, right? So I have to turn the light on real quick. Speaking of getting dark, So this is from Robert M. Place's book entitled The Tarot, Magic, Alchemy, Hermeticism, and Neoplatonism, second edition. It's kind of a history on magic book, really. I've had this book for a while. It's actually he's the author of the deck that I use, my favorite deck. Not the only deck that I use or that I have, but yeah, he has the Alchemical Tarot deck along with another one, the Tarot Sevenfold Mystery. But I digress. The parts of the soul, according to the Egyptians. Robert writes that it is well known that the Egyptians mummified their dead, wrapped them in linen, and placed them in boxes carved in their likeness. These were all magical acts, and we can now see that by doing this, the Egyptians believed that they were imitating Osiris. The reason that the Egyptians wanted to preserve their bodies is that they believed that their souls had several distinct parts, and some parts would need the body even after they were dead. Ancient Egyptian religious beliefs about the soul are confusing and inconsistent. They evolved and changed over 3,000 years of Egyptian civilization. From religious texts and inscriptions, we can determine that the Egyptians observed that each individual had 7 parts. First of all, there is the physical body, or the sum of the body's parts. This was called the Ha, also spelled it's spelled H-A, but it's also spelled H-A-W or K-A-H. And connected to the body and following it everywhere was the Sheut. It's spelled S-H-E-U-T. So Sheut, I'm thinking it's called. And this was the body's shadow or silhouette. In a sunny region like Egypt, the shadow was always present while the sun was in the sky, and at night it merged into the darkness. Egyptians believed that the shadow contained the essence of the person who cast it. Statues of people and deities could also be referred to as shadows and were connected to the subject's essence. Besides this, the shadow also seemed to represent a figure of death, or servant of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of death. The Sheut was depicted in hieroglyphs as a small black human silhouette. Another aspect that was connected to a person's essence was the Ren, which was their name. Egyptians received their names at birth, and they believed that it would live. They received their name at birth, and they believed that it would live on as long as the name was spoken. Names were written in hieroglyphs with an oval rope called a cartouche, encircling them for protection. They believed that the greater the number of places their name was written, the greater chance it had for survival, which is why we still know the names of many important people from ancient Egypt. It seems similar to the Renaissance concept of fame, and in modern terms, we may think of it as a person's reputation. These 3 aspects of a person, the Ha, Sheut, and the Ren, have a physical presence, but the Ib would seem to be a link between the body and the soul. The Ib was the heart, and it was depicted in hieroglyphs as a pot with a handle on each side. It is often referred to as a symbol of the soul, and it seems to be connected to the Ka, which we will discuss below. However, it was also connected to the physical heart, and it was believed that it was formed at birth from the mother's blood. To the Egyptians, the Ib was the home of one's emotions and will, which is similar to expressions about the heart that we find in our language today. The Ib was especially important in the afterlife, and for this reason, in most burials, the physical heart was left inside the corpse, while other organs were removed. The Ib retained the evidence of one's deeds. At the weighing of the heart, Anubis, the god of the dead, would place the Ib on a scale and weigh it against the feather of Maat, the goddess of truth and justice. If the Ib was equal to or lighter than the feather, the deceased had lived a virtuous life and could move on to the next phase. If the Ib was heavier than the feather, it was fed to the monster Amit and ceased to exist. The following is a incantation from the Book of the Dead designed to assure the loyalty of the Ib during the weighing of the heart. O my heart, which I had from my mother, O my heart of my different ages, do not stand up as a witness against me. Do not be opposed to me in the tribunal. Do not be hostile to me in the presence of the keeper of the balance. For you are my Ka, which was in my body, the protector, who made my members hale. The three principal non-material parts of a person, and therefore the soul parts, were the Ka, the Ba, and the Ak. The Ka was the vital essence or life force of the body. It was breathed into the body at birth, and when it left, the body died. But it would stay close to the body after death. And foods and drinks were left for the Ka at the tomb because it was believed that it derived its essence from the essence of food. The hieroglyph for the Ka was a pair of arms reaching upward. The Ba was depicted as a bird with a human head. The Ba was a personality. Well, I'm sorry, the Ba was the personality. It was everything that made a person unique. It survived death, but it did not have to stay close to the body or to the tomb. In fact, it could interact with the living, especially members of the deceased family. The Ba of a living person was connected to their power and their reputation. In modern psychological terms, it would seem to be cognate to our modern concept of the ego. We might think of the Ba as the Ba of a deceased acting like a ghost. And lastly, the Ak, AKH is how that's spelled, was the intellect in itself as a guiding entity. This seems to be similar to the inner guiding intelligence that I call the higher self. The Pharaoh's Ak, for example, was said to be the actions that he conducted that were in harmony with Maat, the goddess of truth and justice. In hieroglyphs, it was depicted as a crested ibis. Also known as the crested ibis, also known as the hermit ibis. After death, a fully formed Ak did not need the body and could become one with the immortal celestial world. As Egyptian beliefs evolved, we find changing ideas of the role of the Ak. It seems to be present while alive, but it would disappear after death and need to be restored. Priests would perform a ritual to unite the Ba and the Ka, and from the union, the Ak was formed. In an alternative version, it was believed that after death, the Ka split into two and formed the Ak and the Ba. The Ak, as a bird, flew to the afterlife where it turned back into the Ka, while the Ba remained on Earth, inhabiting the physical body. And that's it. That is the end of that little section in Robert's book. But I found that it was, when I was reading through it, I made a little note in the margin next to the Ba, and it wrote ghost question mark. And then at the end of that little paragraph, it described the Ba as acting like a ghost on, like if of a passed on loved one. So I was wondering, since we have a few gentlemen here that have the ability to perceive on that plane of existence, if that kind of makes sense, that it's just is it just the personality of the person that is left behind, and is it like separate from, I guess, their soul essence, which is presumably melted back into the oneness of the universe? Does that make sense?
Yeah, my understanding of it is it's a piece of the soul essence that ejected for various reasons. Traumatic, experience will do that. But also I've recent I talk to ghosts almost every day. There's actually one walking around on the porch right now. I was gonna see if Derek could give me a drone shot of my location. I can't seem to do that when I'm, you know, to myself anyway. Um, but anyway, I've been sitting with and thinking a lot about a term for heaven, if you will, that has sort of been lost to modernity. And I remember my grandfather used to use it, and it's the hereafter, right? So that explains it to me perfectly, that they're just here if they want to be. So having a, quote unquote ghost of someone come into your awareness, into your field, is sometimes just them saying hello.
Time is the illusion.
So was that ghost interfering with this cell service earlier? Does he need to be helped right
I mean,
now? Do we need
could
to
have
pause the
been.
show?
Oh, that can absolutely happen.
I mean, if there's, yeah, the energetics is a good telltale sign. If you're having your radio fritzes out or the TV or lights blink or whatever, right? Like they definitely affect the signal. But I'm not too worried about it. I've been doing a clearing for a big ranch lately anyway, so it's I I was out on the porch earlier. Everything seemed great. Every time I come inside, somebody's pacing on the porch. So
Hmm. Catching someone's attention. But the other interesting thing that I found about the the soul, according to the Egyptians, is that the shadow is part, even though it's the physical, it's part of the physical body, right? The all-encompassing, like what makes a human or a person, however, an entity like us, right, is like our shadow. I've never thought of that as being, you know, having deserving of its own category. But in going with the synchro, Derek, did you have something to say?
No, I was just going to add into that too, that, yeah, like you were just saying, the shadows a reflection of you on another density. So it does contain part of you. It's, you think holograms with what's tough stuff to talk about, isn't it?
well, I really liked how they described that as being, a part of the person. Because in my shadow work practice, I will often talk to my shadow, not just metaphorically. Like I'll go outside and look at that bastard and have a conversation, and it's interesting that tradition has translated that to being a part of you. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like it too. That's why I wanted to share it with you guys because it just connected some dots a little bit.
Yeah, it reminds me of some of the underpinnings of the theoretical physics behind like a holographic universe. That, if you have like a hyperdimensional, like a 4D object being projected into a 3D universe, that it's almost like a cross section or reflection. Like when you take a cross section of the 3D and look at it in 2D, you can do the same thing with 4D down to 3D, and that ultimately this existence is that type of shadow through something else. So it certainly makes sense that something within this world that can create another shadow from you might lead to something else. I like it.
Yeah, so that would be our shadow would be ourselves in the two-dimensional reality then. Because shadow doesn't have depth, it only
I'll
has
just default
height
to
and width, right?
animism and say the shadow is real.
It is, according to the Egyptians, absolutely. And then that kind of also ties into the whole silver being analogous to the moon in alchemical correspondences. So and the moon is supposed to be our shadow side when in terms of astrologically speaking. Astrologically, I just made that word up. I like it. Astrologically. So, and speaking of the little synchronicities there, but oh, the other thing that struck me about this was the name Ren, and that they have it circled in an oval rope called a cartouche. Like this to me, like so it speaks of fame, right? And Robert mentions that, but the word that came to my head was legacy, right? And I think legacy is one of those egoic things that it goes to help drive us to procreate, right? Is we want to ensure that our memory lives on, and or we live on some in some degree or the other, right? So it's interesting to see that the Egyptians also had that concept of fame. But speaking of,
Well, and they might have also had the concept of trying to get things to survive through not just fame per se, but humanity through epic cataclysm. I mean, they are kind of like, either building on or participating in some of the great structures that survived the last cataclysm.
oh yeah, just for the continuance of knowledge, right? Of preservation, I should
Look,
say.
Edgar Casey said that there was going to be a hollow spot underneath one of the pauses of the Sphinx. It was found. It's never been publicly excavated. So, sure. I think there's secret repositories of knowledge that, yeah, that Egypt has definitely held. I mean, there's tons and tons of underground caverns and areas that are completely barred from the public there as well.
Yeah, that's where they keep all the angel tech down there, away from the public. But that's maybe a topic for a different show. I have to do some research, read some serious research sources for that kind of statement. But just real quickly,
Yeah, I thought all the angel tech was underground in Colorado.
in Colorado, what?
That's what my understanding of it. There's a bunch of underground stuff in Colorado.
Oh,
I just assumed the angels and aliens were hanging out.
oh, I'm sure that's probably one of the spots. They have more than one hangout, right? But speaking of just synchronicities, and real quickly before we get into the other interesting stories I have lined up, I talked about in the third segment last show, I talked about the cure for leprosy and it involving two birds, and how this is a metaphor for the cure for anything, really, when it's broken down by Neville Goddard. But I came across this headline and just kind of chuckled to myself because the CDC has issued an alert about a biblical disease increasing in a southern state. I think this is bad. This might be okay. I take that back. I think this is bad. Um, this is in Florida,
Of course
so
it is.
oh wait a second. Is this okay? That must be a moniker, but anyway, I put the link in the chat for you guys. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says cases of the infectious disease of leprosy have become more common in Florida in recent years. So,
Well, fun fact, I don't know. Oh, they mention it here. This is very actually cool. Nobody mentions this. Armadillos, yeah. Armadillos are the only known vector for leprosy.
really,
Yeah, so don't chase armadillos and pick them up without wearing protection, which I've definitely done my fair share of capturing armadillos to relocate them.
That was my question. Do people like just want to give them a hug, or are
No, because
barbecuing?
here's my experience. They're on your property, they're digging holes, they're a nuisance. If you can grab them around the back of the shell, they're not that bad, but they're kind of hard to corner into like a cage. But if you can get your hands on them, they don't go full possum on you. So you can control them and just throw them in a container and then drive them out to, a different scrub area and release them. But I mean, that's from my experience from armadillos was.
and so those are all over the place in Florida? I know that they're
Yeah, they're pretty common.
okay.
They're in Louisiana as well. I didn't encounter them on my dive jobs when we land on shore, and you see them running. They're really slow. You can literally kind of speed walk up to them and relocate them. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, they got short little bursts of runs, so if they know where they're diving and going to it, it's good to have two people. You got to juke them like a football player.
Don't people?
And when I was if you made a real loud noise, they'd just ball up and then just go pick up.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Don't people stick beer cans?
I have heard they're marching north now as well. They're being sighted in Missouri. Yeah. I mean, I suppose as we warm up, right? But they're starting to see them in farther north than they have, and definitely in Missouri.
Well, I'm going to take that segue because the rest of my stories have to do with animals. There was one that I can't find because I missed the link about a new type of concrete that can store energy. So we will save that for next time. But something to do with MIT engineers developing a new type of concrete. But
it's
anyway,
50% C4.
right. Virgin birth in animals. Here we go.
Very somewhat common. A lot of species have this.
Well, this was actually genetically engineered into female animals for the first time.
Well, this has happened they've seen it in captivity with sharks and some other animals. I want to say there's like 3 or 4 species of animals that have done spontaneous virgin birthing.
I was going to since I saw Ben's technical difficulties earlier, I had a backup reading of Neville Goddard prepared about the Annunciation and the virgin birth of Mary. But we're going to stick with our original plan and talk about the Sabbath for the sword segment instead. But the this is from nature.com, and it says that scientists alter the genomes of female fruit flies, allowing them to reproduce without any contribution from a male. So I guess this is just a laboratory induced thing, not observed out in nature. But for the first time, scientists have used genetic engineering to trigger virgin birth in female animals that normally need a male partner to reproduce. Previously, scientists have generated young mice and frogs with no genetic input from a male parent, but those offspring were made by tinkering with egg cells in laboratory dishes rather than by giving female animals the capacity for virgin birth, also known as parthenogenesis. Earlier research identified candidate genes for parthenogenesis, says study co-author Alex Sperling, a development biologist at the University of Cambridge, UK. But her team, she says, not only pinpointed such genes, but also confirmed their function by activating them in another species. In mammals, offspring are produced when, we know this, but we don't know how that works, but many species of insect and lizard, as well as other animals, have also evolved parthenogenesis, which requires no genetic contribution from a male as an alternative to sex. To identify the genes that underlie parthenogenesis, Sperling and her colleagues sequenced the genomes of 2 strains of the fruit fly, one that reproduces sexually and another that reproduces through parthenogenesis. The researchers then compared gene activity in eggs from flies capable of parthenogenesis with that in eggs from flies capable of only sexual reproduction to identify the genes that work during one process but not the other. The comparison allowed the authors to identify 44 genes, it's an interesting number, that were potentially involved in parthenogenesis. Here we go. After altering various combinations of genes, these scientists hit on a combination that induced parthenogenesis in roughly 11% of female fruit flies. So this is only efficacious about 11% of the time, 10%.
Looks like in 2022, they've done the same thing with mice using CRISPR technology.
Ooh, CRISPR. Yeah, so if we can do
Yeah,
this,
CRISPR technology, the most terrifying thing out there when combined with a gene engine, and probably going to be the downfall of life as we know it. And not necessarily life, but life as we know it.
did you guys hear about that story a few months ago about the baby incubators, like the baby factories, where you could pick out whatever you
Build a
wanted?
bear,
Hmm?
like a build a bear for humans.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I don't know if you guys recall that, but I guess I was going to ask because I don't think that was true. I think that was a
No, I didn't hear about that. I was laughing in the background about the Build-A-Bear for humans. I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck is happening?
No, I mean if it's going to happen anywhere, it's going to be in China, right?
yeah, it was some corporate private company that had come up with this technology, but I don't think it was real. It did create quite the buzz in the internet.
Have you ever heard of a gene drive, Bill?
I've heard of CRISPR, but I don't know exactly.
They found a way. So normally, let's say you genetically modify a creature and you put it out into the wild, it's going to go and eventually those genes will be diluted because it's going to mate and it gets kind of separated out. With a gene drive, you completely eliminate that because in the offspring, it also overwrites the code and it becomes permanent. Whatever you input it in for that half of the genetics, it's there. It's baked in. It's not going anywhere. And that's the technology that they are. I don't know if they've implemented it yet or looking to, but putting into mosquitoes so that if you put in some sort of gene to prevent their propagation or a disease transmission, that it then permanently stays undiluted.
Which would make that creature then immune or
Well, it would have the genetics that it was built with. So, I mean, if you think about it, like, if a mother and a father have a child, their child has the propensity to have, a possibility of different eye colors based on the genes that were given to them. And then they'll have kids, and those genes will get, diluted and diluted and diluted. But with a gene drive, if you were to put in there to say have blue eyes, your kids will have blue eyes, their kids will have blue eyes, their kids will have blue eyes.
okay, so it's permanently turned on.
Yeah, exactly. It's taking part of the DNA and it's re-encoding itself. I'll have to find a good article to explain it because I am definitely not doing the science justice.
Couldn't you then
But it
plant?
essentially means that you can design a gene and force it to propagate forever.
Yeah. This reminds me of I think it's called The Sixth Day with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I watched this movie the other night. It's about cloning and gene editing, and the bad guys are putting the diseases into the new clones so they have a limited lifespan, and this will ensure that they follow the corporate guidelines, right? And when they die, they get a new body with a limited lifespan, and this is how they keep control of people. But the way
Interesting.
that they have you guys seen this movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
No, it
The
reminds me a
Sixth
little bit
Day.
of
No.
Star Trek plot in which I forget the role or something. Anyways, there's a creature that's genetically modified to be highly addicted to a drug that if they don't get it, they'll
Oh, that's kind of like the Jen Hadar in Deep
the
Space.
Jem'Hadar. That's exactly what it is. The Jem'Hadar. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's almost like you have a disease. If you stop taking this medicine, you die. If you don't do what we say, you don't
It's
cure.
it got me thinking about a McKenna quote. When he's talking about the nearer we get to the singularity, the more novelty that will appear. And it's like picking a kid out of a catalog seems pretty novel to me, anyway.
It's incredibly novel. If you go back to like biblical times and think of just the idea of a store or a Walmart, like the ability to walk and pick up packages and food and animal meat and things that are preserved and it's all right there. Like That's insanity from a novelty factor.
It is. Supermarkets are a weird place.
I only eat the Takis that are bright blue.
So with the there's technology we're deep species.
You're chopping
So
up
I mean,
real
what
bad
mammoth
there.
is
Chopping up a little bit. Maybe try to start over. Couldn't really understand you there. He muted. That's okay. The other interesting part about this sixth day movie is that the way that they collected your brain data was to take an iris scan of your eyeball. And if you remember last week's episode, we talked about WorldCoin. Oh, Ben just dropped off, so maybe we'll hear from Ben later. But the WorldCoin project, where they scan your eyeball to prove that you're human, so you can get cryptocurrency. That's how they did it in this movie with Arnold, anyway.
Well, listen, if you want to go
So-
down deep rabbit holes, there's something to remote viewing. If you want to find a unique identifier on somebody, get their DNA, get their iris scan. And if you somehow cracked a physics behind a system, an AI or something that could utilize that code, then boom, you've got your target number.
Yeah, that's what they used to build your clone back. Basically, like took a picture of your brain and then mapped your brain onto the new fleshy body in.
Well, if cloning is going to happen, it's going to come. I think of there's a great episode of Sliders in which they slide into a future in which clones are used, but it's simply if you're rich, you clone yourself and you harvest the organs when you need them. Like, why wouldn't I mean, there's huge ethical reasons, but for people that are willing to, drink children's blood, I'm pretty sure they're willing to clone a body of themselves and murder it.
Yeah, I mean, we could all be cloned right now. That's certainly a theory that I've heard put forth. I mean, we did clone that sheep back in the 70s, so like we did it.
Well, look at how much DNA we share with things like pigs. We have more genetic sharing with pigs than like any other creature out there. You can transplant a pig's heart into a human and make it work substantially for extended periods of time. Angie's dad has a bovine valve in his heart. It's like it's a common thing. And, a lot of religious books tell you not to eat pigs. If you think about a long enough timeline with us being wiped out, yeah, genetic engineering could have been a thing here before. Like Monsanto's might not be the first evil.
No, yeah, I think that corn was genetically
Oh
modified
yeah, and
to be the way
and
that it
genetically
is.
modified, even if just by human hands.
Not even the GMO corn that we have today. I'm like the plant,
Corn.
the
Yeah, you
plant,
find
right?
a plant
Yeah.
that's growing a little bit of a juicy bit on it that tastes good, and then one grows more of it, and you keep doing that over and over again until you get the genes. Why is weed so killer today? It's so killer today because people have gone through the art of learning the plant and knowing how to take different strains and create stronger ones. Why do we have gigantic tomatoes? It's the same reasons. Like it's amazing if like I was watching a thing with Graham Hancock today, talking about how the Amazon forests are man-made. They are man cultivated. The dominant species are edible foods, are things like the different nuts and hazelnuts and things that are indigenous and out there. And if you look at how it is, it's thousands of years of people living in the area building a giant garden.
Yeah, I was reading some story a few minutes ago actually that was about a new civilization that was discovered in the Amazon using light radar. And of
Yeah,
course there's
yeah.
pyramids everywhere and
No, we're talking like hundreds of millions of people living in cities. We're talking massive amounts, and they were never discovered because of smallpox. You have a group of people that come through, make contact, report all these amazing civilizations. Everybody gets sick, everybody dies, the cities fall. Nature overtakes very quickly. Within a couple of 100 years, next set of explorers come through, and there's no evidence. It's gone. It's buried underneath the forests. And, take this over time memorial going back hundreds of thousands, I say millions, in millions of years. Things get older the deeper you go. It's something like, 12 inches or something for every like 100 years. Expand that out long enough. How many civilizations are buried under, 2-3 miles of rock?
All of them. They're all buried underneath there.
Yeah.
All the old ones are under our feet. But speaking of old things, these next series of stories I have lined up all have to do with thought to be extinct species being rediscovered. And we've got both plants and animals in this lineup. So this first one is, I should have looked at this a little bit more closely, but it's a video. It's a video story. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen real quick, and I'll get this playing so we can all listen to it together, and it'll just be on the recording for us. Should have had this queued up before, but alas, it's a learning curve. Now we're getting the blue spinning circle of infinity. I don't know how this is going to work. But it is around the Hawaii area, 1,000 nautical miles southwest of Hawaii. And so it's underwater. Now a team of scientists is mapping the ocean floor, and they discovered an animal that they thought was extinct, and it's not the case anymore because they saw it. But we will not be able to hear what exactly it is because this video is not loading. Nothing else is. There's no writing in this article either. So,
now to a
here we
dive
go.
in the Pacific
Here we
where
go.
scientists are studying parts of the deep never been explored before. Emily Cristobal has the story.
Nearly 1,000 nautical miles southwest of Hawaii, a NOAA team of scientists is mapping the deep sea and making groundbreaking discoveries.
What is that? I don't never seen
What?
anything like that.
And it has
It's
that
like-
jet propulsion characteristic of a jellyfish.
I mean, that is a
Literally.
jelly.
Exploring waters deep below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, a team of 31 scientists with NOAA's Ocean Exploration Cooperative Institute is making discoveries just like these. From their research ship stationed in the Pacific remote islands, researchers are able to see the world underwater by remotely controlling two highly equipped robots.
It's just arrayed with lights and sensors, and it's got two robotic arms that allow us to pick up samples and stuff like that. It's got a whole host of different water tanks and baskets for us to bring samples back.
Brian Kennedy is one of the lead scientists of this expedition and says they even found organisms they thought had been extinct.
One of my favorite organisms is the stalked crinoid, that are these big, beautiful, flower-looking animals, but they grow this on this long stalk called sea lilies, and that's really what they look like a lot of times. And these were thought extinct. We thought these were a relic of pre-dinosaur times, and now we find that they're one of the most common organisms in the deep sea.
But while this area is home to some of the most pristine waters in the world, it's already facing numerous threats.
Even in the deep sea, miles underwater, there are the effects of climate change. It's getting warmer. It's getting more acidic. There's derelict fishing gear and there's litter out there. We're finding microplastics still in the deep sea.
And that's why this exploration was launched, to not only survey uncharted territory, but understand what policies and actions are needed to protect the area for generations to come.
So we're going to have to take really dramatic action, and that's going to involve a little bit of everything from using less to using more wisely, and probably even recapturing some of the carbon we've emitted.
And I'll just stop it there because they'll probably just talk about global warming after that. Stop the share as well. Yeah. So tiny little tree animal looking thing.
Yeah, wasn't that thing crazy looking? I've seen on one of the dive jobs I was on, we saw a 6 gilled shark, but that was back in the days when they weren't proven yet. So I've seen a lot of odd things, but nothing like that. And I don't know that I caught the depth, did they say, other than deep in the ocean?
It says nearly 1,000 nautical miles southwest.
Oh yeah, that'd be the 1 atmosphere suits. Oh, miles? Wait, under.
Oh, I think it's just miles from Hawaii. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, it shouldn't be that deep. But regardless, yeah, I think there's so much crazy stuff under there. We have no idea what really exists down there.
I would venture
Exactly.
to.
They find new things when it swims in front of the lens.
Yeah, great point.
Oh yeah, there's got to be some kind of outposts or bases down there. I know that there's been reports of UFOs or UAPs flying up and out of Lake Michigan. So it
I've
wouldn't surprise me. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I've seen a UFO myself before I even got into all the what I call the woo-woo stuff. Geez, that was back in it was off Huntington Beach. I'm trying to think, Catalina Island. We were off there, and I wasn't into UFOs, didn't have any understanding what they were, and it was 2 or 3 of my friends just out there on the end of a dock or a pier, and all of a sudden it just was underwater. I mean, just flying. Well, I don't know what you call it, flying underwater, but moving underwater. It was probably the size of oh geez, I don't know, maybe 100 feet long. So not huge, but it was out there, and we didn't know what the heck it was. I mean, I guess it could have been a military thing. I never thought about it until you were just mentioning that again, and that was the 80s.
Yeah, but it's probably been whatever is down there has probably been down there for a while. So probably if it was, military or ET of some sort, probably very old. But speaking of old, this next story has to do with another extinct species. This is from discoverwildlife.com. It's Australia. We're going to Australia this time. This earless dragon is so rare it was thought extinct until 2 ecologists came across one in the wild. A critically endangered reptile, known only to occur in the grasslands around Melbourne, has been spotted for the first time in more than 50 years. Deep within the grasslands of West Melbourne, Australia, the population of Victorian grassland earless dragons has been quietly living and reproducing out of sight of humans. So out of sight that there has been a verifiable record since 1969, despite several targeted searches, and many feared that the species was extinct. In January of this year, 2 ecologists were out surveying for another grassland lizard and found one of the dragons. Initially, they were unsure of the species, and they took a number of photographs and then released it back into the wild. And they did some morphological comparisons, and it indicated the high likelihood that it was a Victorian grassland earless dragon. And this was confirmed by later genetic analysis. And they talk a little bit more about conservation and the like, but it's a relatively short article. But yeah, these are just kind of like ripples in time. We've got things popping up that are thought to be extinct, and all these articles are within the past like 4 months. Like I didn't say the dates when I read
I
them.
shared an article in there, Bill,
messages. Okay,
and it's showing a case where a bird re-evolved out of extinction, and essentially in Madagascar, species was wiped out. Another bird re-evolves back from another species and is almost indistinguishable from the original bird. So when I start to think, and this has been documented in several different species, when I start to thinking about things like that, it's like, yeah, it could be really hidden. There could be a few, or, could it be that life is what the environment needs, or, how life is represented is based on the environment. If you take a goldfish and put it in a small tank, it won't grow bigger until you put it in a bigger tank. Maybe humans are going to be populated on the earth if the conditions are right.
Makes sense to me. And as I kind
Apple
of
trees make apples and earths make people, as well as reptiles.
Yeah, so that article you shared was the story I was going to share next. So we'll talk about synchronicity.
I'm sorry, I completely beat you to the punch, Bill.
Don't worry about it. I mean, it was in line. So, but yeah, it's about.
This is one of my favorite stories of all time. It's
Dude,
like
this thing is so cool looking. It looks like a freaking dinosaur.
Well, I mean, I've seen Jurassic Park.
Right? But I have wood. So this is a woodpecker. It's an ivory-billed woodpecker, and I've got woodpeckers, at least two different species, flying around my woods here. I see them all the time, and they sound hilarious. They look hilarious. They're just fun to watch.
They sound hilarious when they start pecking on metal items.
Yeah, yeah. We had actually we had one. It flew into our window because it's reflective, and sometimes the birds get confused. This happens more often than you would think, actually. But it knocked itself out. It knocked itself out, and it got stuck in There's a rose bush out front below this window. So Ellie went out there and she plucked it off the rose bush, and it was out cold. So we take it, we put it in this. This wagon thing, this yard wagon that we have in the garage, and Ellie's kind of just talking to it, making sure, we're figuring out, it looks okay. It's just knocked out. And the bird hops up, right? And he chills out on her arm for a second. And then he flies up to the metal, what do you call it? The awning, not the awning, but the overhang on your roof. And he's grabbing onto that and chilling out there for a little bit, but he didn't peck at it. But yeah, it's my little woodpecker story for this show, for this story, this headline. But yeah, it's from al.com, alabama.com. It says a new video and photographs purporting to show ivory-billed woodpeckers flying in a Louisiana forest were published by researchers on Thursday, as government officials said they will make a final decision this year on whether the birds are extinct. The images, grainy and taken from a distance by drones and trail cameras, offer tantalizing hints that the large woodpecker yet may still exist almost 80 years after the last agreed upon sightings in Louisiana. Several experts said it adds to prior indications of their survival. They called on the government to drop the pending proposal to write off the so-called Lord God bird, a nickname derived from the exclamation that some viewers made upon seeing one. But others dismissed the new research as inconclusive, including a scientist who said some of the footage clearly depicts another type of woodpecker many amateurs mistake for the ivory-billed. The peer-reviewed research in the journal Ecology and Evolution comes from a group that's spent more than a decade searching for the woodpeckers at an undisclosed site. It includes drone video from as early as October that shows a pair of birds with black and white coloring on the wings that researchers say helps distinguish them as ivory-billed woodpeckers. The last time a pair of birds was photographed would have been in the 1930s. So it's really extraordinary on that level. Is a quote by some guy with Project Principalis. And the researchers also collected audio recordings of the woodpeckers, and most of the team had some kind of direct encounter, either seeing or hearing them. An ivory-billed woodpecker would seem hard to miss with a 30-inch wingspan and a call reminiscent of a bulb bicycle horn. That's interesting. However, the bird's preferred habitat is dense woodlands that can be hard for people to navigate. Many of those areas were logged early last century and most recent agreed upon sighting was in 1944. So we've got a possible another Jurassic Park bird back from oblivion. And we've got the next story. There's two more here. As I was putting these together, I was thinking to myself, yeah, this is great. This will be a great segment. I'll have all these examples of the ripple in time and how things
Where
have
did they say how they captured that bird's picture? Was it like on a game camera?
I think it mentioned something about trail cams and drones. Yeah.
Yeah. Trail cams are really changing what we understand about wildlife. Um, Simple things like there'd been reports, but nobody knew how common it was that deer would eat ground nesting birds. And it's like super common. They love to eat birds.
What?
So it's no surprise that you might all of a sudden discover, a bird that only lives in, deep thickets in the wood. You wouldn't even go back in there to begin with until it flies out.
Wow. But the stuff you learn from Adam is amazing. Every podcast.
I appreciate Adam's encyclopedic.
I know. I'm in awe.
It is. So their predator is deer then.
Well, it's a predator. Same thing with cows. Cows will eat ground nesting birds. They love them as well. It's like chickens. Chickens love insects, small bugs, little snakes, things like that. They are carnivores. They don't just eat the corn that the farmer throws them.
Well,
but yeah, it's one of those cool little discoveries that no proof of. Same thing with black cats in the wild. There have been a lot of those photographed out there in places where they're not supposed to exist.
I just heard Ben sent me a text message to backtrack there a little bit, but yeah, he's still having ghost issues apparently.
He keeps moving deeper into the woods.
Yeah. That's what happens in the wilderness. Things get wonky. Speaking of wilderness, though, this next story is about a tree. It is from TexasMonthly.com. And it's very short here. What? It says who, what, and why it's so great. Who, Michael Eason, Associate Director of Conservation and Collections at the San Antonio Botanical Garden, and a nationwide team of tree experts. What? A missing oak species. It's a Latin name. I never took Latin, so I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that. That was thought to be extinct until 9 botanical researchers scoured Big Bend in search of one last living tree. Why it's so great. When the last known specimen of the oak species, better known as the Chisos Mountains oak or late leaf oak, died or otherwise vanished, no one is quite sure what happened. In 2011, scientists thought it was extinct. That changed last May when a single living tree was discovered in Big Bend National Park, giving researchers a chance to revive the species. Michael played a critical role in that discovery as part of a team of 9 botanical researchers funded by Morton Arboretum. And but United States Botanic Garden, who carefully searched the park for evidence of the oak species survival. Oh, there's a little bit more here. But link will be in the show notes for those of you who want to read more about this tree. It's kind of sad though. There's only one left. I guess that's good, and that they have a chance to repropagate the species. Looking for silver linings here, in keeping with the segment theme. But this last one is you get 3 in 1. So 3 for 1. It's from jpost.com, the Jerusalem Post. and it's about 3 extinct species. A British tourist shocked scientists by discovering 3 extinct species. As a 51-year-old British tourist, by discovering, shocked scientists by rediscovering 3 species that had thought to be extinct. He was enjoying his holiday in Papua New Guinea recently and discovered 3 species of animals that have thought to have been extinct, obviously. So they were extinct, if you haven't got onto that by now. Michael Smith, a 51-year-old holiday maker, was conversing with locals about birds when they told him of a colorful bird known as Lusata pitta. It was worth noting that adventuring is just a hobby for Smith, who works full-time as the head of research and analytics for a medical communications agency. Lusata pitta, the bird, was described as looking similar to a robin and native to the lowland forests of an almost unreachable island. This greatly sparked Smith's curiosity. Smith made his way through the jungle with a recording of a related species birdsong. After some wandering, the birdsong recording he was playing received a reply. Immediately, Smith took a picture of the bird. This bird was later identified by scientists, and Smith was told that the bird was thought to be extinct. Dr. Ian Burfield, global science coordinator at BirdLife International, said, "It is great to have the bird's presence confirmed." And this next one is Teleformin sussus.
Real quick, Bill.
Yeah.
I think that's a little hilarious because he basically just catfished a bird.
He did.
He goes to the middle of the wilderness, gets him to come out like, hey, what's up? I'm not the lady you're looking for.
Psych. Just kidding. And now we know you're alive.
Humans are dicks.
But on the same trip, Smith decided to go adventuring again, this time to find Telefomin sussus. A Telefomin sussus is a type of possum, which was also thought to have gone extinct after 1997. Smith discovered the species after climbing 1,000 meters up a mountain. This guy's doing a lot for a R&D tech. Up the mountain, Smith discovered a local tribe cooking the possum. While that may seem distressing, as the animal was thought to have been entirely extinct, Smith confirmed its continued existence through its skull. Smith claimed that the tribe thought he was a spirit, according to the Daily Star, who reported him saying, "We went to villages quite near the road and found a local family had assembled dead cuscusses. Cuscusses? They were going to eat, as the cuscusses is one of the main items of protein. At least I could see various cuscusses before they'd end up on dinner plates and was able to examine the bodies. Once they had been eaten, I was able to photograph their skulls and take measurements." Previous discoveries. These discoveries have become habit for Smith, who reportedly discovered a Wandi Woi tree kangaroo in 2018. The kangaroo was thought to be extinct as it hadn't been seen since 1928. Tree kangaroos are tropical marsupials that are close relatives of ground-dwelling kangaroos and wallabies. These medium-sized kangaroos have muscled forearms to pull themselves up the trunks of trees and move around the branches using an odd mix of climbing and hopping, according to the National Geographic. Now that sounds like some kind of CRISPR animal to me, some kind of weird splicer thing. Oh, they got huge forearms the size of my head, ripped. Little munchkin kangaroo. It's kind of horrifying. Think about a little bit.
Yeah, I just saw the video that Adam shared in chat there of the deer and the bird.
Oh,
And until now, I thought deer were, vegetarians. I guess didn't give it that much thought.
Right? Do you think bird seed? Do you throw bird seed out there? They eat that and bread. But yeah, I don't really think of them as being predators too much. I saw a bald eagle. It flew super close to me the other day. That was kind of
Definitely predators.
yeah.
Oh my God, those things are beautiful and amazing.
That's like the second or third one I've seen this year.
Is it near your house that you've seen them?
Yeah, well, it was on a river that's kind of by my house, and the first time was down in southern Indiana.
Start looking for a nest. I mean, they're fairly easy to spot if you can get in line sight of the tree. They usually like to be in one of the highest points.
I've got one outside my store here, Mystical Wares. It's a couple hundred yards away, if that.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's cool to see them fly in every day and bring back a fish, the unbelievable size that how are they flying with that thing? They're
Oh my
huge.
God.
They're
I
all over.
love watching birds fly with fish.
Yeah, I
Like
live on the
I
Puget.
put my brain into the bird or into the fish's mind of what he's going through at that moment when I'm seeing it. It always blows my mind. Like, dude, the experience you're having right now.
I've seen them drop the fish.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's great because I live right in the Puget Sound, so it's literally a daily occurrence if you sit out there enough, and it's pretty crazy.
Were they dropping it
Accident.
on accident?
Yeah.
Not to kill it. Yeah. Okay. I know some birds do that with like turtles, I think. We'll take a
Oh, yeah.
turtle.
There's birds that will take and put nuts or things that are hard to open in the road for cars to run over, and then they'll go and pick up the remnants. I read a story about a guy who found, I think it was a crow locally that was doing that. And so once he realized with that crow he was doing it, he started purposefully running over what it was putting in the road, and they became like they would know he would always come to his car when he was coming to drive by. I was like, that's such a cool friendship.
Right? I've always wanted to like establish trade with crows. They could bring me, quarters and stuff.
Well, listen, not all birds, but most birds will talk to you. They'll at least give you a few seconds of communication. I always encourage people to try it. It's one of my favorite things to do is talk to birds.
You are the bird. Be the bird.
Yeah, and listen, they live a long time. I just found out that
Bald eagles?
mockingbirds live like an average of 8 years in the wild, and like 15 to 20 in captivity. I was like, that's a long time for a mockingbird. So it's nice to know that the ones that I befriended, when I'm whistling at them, like, yeah, I don't have to feel like it's probably not that bird. It very well could be the same one.
Are you catfishing that bird?
I am. No, I have a couple of unique whistles that I use with my local mockingbirds. I whistle the Mario tune.
No way.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Well,
That's funny because you're gonna like all of a sudden that mockingbird's gonna do it near somebody else, and then you go, what in the heck,
Oh yeah, I know I've told it on the show, but listen to how birds are talking. They always do the classic alarm, the woo 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 ee.
Yeah.
Listen to that sound, whistle that sound at birds, and you will get whistled back to. And it is so cool. It's like, oh my gosh, there's this language through our technology that has been imparted on birds that we can then use to communicate with them.
There is actually entire languages built
No,
around
birds have
whistling.
languages. Birds are smart. Birds mourn their dead. Like, yeah, the term bird brain is a misnomer. They actually have really tiny neurons in their brains, so they're actually able to have a much higher density brain than we can have. I mean, look at parrots. You'd think that thing was an alien. It's the size of a football, but yet it can sound exactly like a human.
Right? There's a little bit of Batesian mimicry going on. That's another topic that we can get into. Now that I've said it, maybe I'll research it for the next show.
I'm not familiar with that term, but
well, it's like when a cat will chirp like a squirrel when it sees a squirrel.
Yeah.
That's to make it think that it's not a threat so that it can get close to it and kill it. So we see this illustrated in nature and in paranormal, the paranormal as well, I would think, with some of these stories of these clicking sounds that people hear out in the deep woods.
It makes sense though. It's kind of like an innate part of just being. Children will try to mimic. Look at even dogs and cats. They don't have the vocal cords, but there's enough videos out there, and I've seen it with my cats, where you have a line of communication and you're asking simple questions like, you want food, you want water, words they know, and you'll get pronounced no's, like a meow, like a sound within it, a mama instead of just a, mom. Like it's very interesting to see that there is a mimicry going on to try to mimic the tonality and response of the words that we're able to articulate. So even in species that don't do it, it happens. I mean, we learn by copying. Children learn by copying. The first words they say are usually, the ones that are enunciated the most around them. So, I mean, maybe the trickster aspect of life is just that. It's going to have a mimicry aspect.
It is a weird like mirror hologram universe, so it makes sense for things to mimic. They say that history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes, right?
Yeah, everything comes in a different flavor.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Ben is going to show back up. So I'm at a conundrum here. We can go with the Sabbath reading, or we can take this one about the Annunciation, which kind of pairs well with a news story that I have been holding on to about the Virgin Mary and a statue. So I think I'm going. Ben was interested in the Sabbath thing, so I'm going to save that for him. We'll hit that next week. Hopefully, he will have the ghost problem figured out by then. I'll put this last story in the chat for you guys. And this is from dailysaba.com. And it says, every third of the month, a multitude of devoted individuals congregate in a windswept field near Rome, firmly believing that a statue of the Virgin Mary sheds tears of blood. They also come to see the 53-year-old woman who they believe has been performing miracles and healing the sick since she brought the statuette home from a pilgrimage to Medjugorje in Bosnia, where many Catholics believe the Virgin Mary has been appearing since 1981. So, side note, the Marian apparitions has been something that has been of interest to me since a very, very, very early age, being brought into this world and indoctrinated into the Catholic Church from birth. These types of subjects have just kind of stuck out to me because they're weird, right? It talks about, weird celestial events, beings appearing in the sky, messages being received. So this particular Medjugorje apparition or series of visions that is mentioned here in this story is kind of holds a special place for me because when I was a young boy at St. Anthony's Parish, we had one of the children that was involved in the Medjugorje visions visit our parish, right? And he went into he wasn't a child anymore. It's been, since 1981, right? So he gave a little talk, but the I don't really remember exactly what he said, because the most impressionable thing to me that evening was the feeling that I got after he went into this trance and allegedly spoke to the Virgin Mary, right? But the feeling, it was like a wave. It was a wave of energy that washed over the entire congregation. It felt like it wasn't just me. but it was warm, it was pleasant, it was very peaceful. It was a good vibe and energy. But I think that I've shared that story with Derek before. Have Derek, do you remember that? Do you remember me talking about this at all? Because I think I had a question about like who, like how do you perceive this Virgin Mary, like if you could translate it into not
That
esoteric knowledge or language. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I do remember you talking about it, but and then I know that there's been lots of different statues that have done this, and some have been, shown to be hoaxes, and others they can't prove, and it's not. So I mean, we can look on that particular one right now, and I'm looking right now. It's always it's so interesting from my perspective, even though I do this, and I don't even know for how long now. The instant activation of subtle energies around me. So the on cue again, tones coming in and ringing and all of that stuff that I don't even think about until it just kind of hits me. On this case, what I got when you asked something like that, I always like to try and describe how this goes from my perspective, because it's something we can all do. And I'm a remote perceiver. Yeah, they used to call it remote viewing. So this time, and it varies all the time when I receive input, was a visual. So I actually got to see, you can think of it as like a hazy video going on. That one, it was manifesting there. In short, it was a legit one. And I could see here's the frustrating term again, energies manifesting inside and then coming out. So it was the entities or spirits around it manifest enough energy in it to have that happen, if that makes sense. So I'm not saying there was a person inside of that statue. I know I'm not even talking physical.
Okay. Right.
Okay. So there was not an entity like crammed in there like a genie in a bottle. And you weren't saying that either, but that wasn't the thing. It was a manifesting thing.
Okay. So you're talking, yeah. So we're back onto the statue part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a little bit about Medjugorje. Uh, Gisela Cardia is the visionary that these people are going to see. Claims the statue was responsible for a modern twist on Christ's miracle of the loaves and fishes, feeding visitors to her home in Trevignano Romano from a never diminishing pizza. Believers say Cardia is a visionary, exclaiming she predicted the war in Ukraine and the COVID-19 pandemic, her body marked by the stigmata of Christ's wounds from the crucifixion. So bleeding statues, chief among them is Cardia's conviction for bankruptcy fraud in 2013 and the charity the former businesswoman has set up to help the sick. Although it has been swollen by donations, some say their generosity has been abused. Then in March, a private detective that said tests showed the statue's tears were animal blood. Prosecutors are now investigating Cardia and the shrine she set up on a hill outside the village overlooking Lake Bracciano is threatened with demolition. The local Catholic bishop has ordered his clergy to have nothing to do with the shrine and has asked the faithful to stay away. A church inquiry commission, composed of independent experts, is now looking into the phenomena. But Father Salvatore Parella, the influential head of a theological group in Rome dedicated to studying the Virgin Mary, did not hide his hostility. We have known for a while that this so-called visionary was absolutely not reliable, he told AFP. Trevignano should not be counted among the apparitions of the Virgin Mary. Yet the faithful continue to flock to Cardia's hilltop shrine with its altar, large blue cross, and an almost life-size statue of the Virgin. Since the Virgin of Tears in Syracuse, Sicily, began crying in 1953, the only weeping statue acknowledged by a pope, Italy has seen countless strange or unexplained phenomena around religious statues. The oldest and most celebrated of this cult, or the oldest and most celebrated, is the cult of San Girano, the patron saint of Naples, an ampoule of whose blood liquefies 3 times a year by popular tradition. An ampoule, I had to look this up, but if I remember correctly, it's just a glass container, clear glass container that is used in laboratory chemical experiments, right? It's just a container, right? But beyond Italy, statues have been reported to secrete water, oil, or perfume as far afield as Attika in Japan and Nanju in South Korea. Korea. The Catholic Church says some are scientifically inexplicable. Scientists say many have rational explanations like condensation, varnish coming off, or chemical reactions between paint and the air. While Pope Francis warned against certain apparitions in June in a thinly veiled reference to the Virgin of Trevignano, some of his predecessors have not been so reticent. John Paul II was supportive of another miraculous plaster statuette from Medjugorje, which has been drawing crowds to this other town an hour's drive from Trevignano since 1995. A family there claims to have witnessed it crying tears of blood on 14 separate occasions. Although Neville, we'll get to him in a second, although never officially recognized by the Vatican. Oh, of course, it had to reload just then. Here we go. Never officially recognized, fervor around the statue has not been dampened over the years, with the statuette housed in a church on the edge of the port city north of Rome. Photos displayed inside show her cheeks red with blood, with tents outside to welcome visitors and vendors selling religious icons and effigies of the Virgin. However, analysis of the blood has shown it came from a man. However, the men of the family who own the statue stubbornly refused to take DNA tests. On the other side of the Adriatic in Medjugorje, where both statues were made, locals firmly believe in the apparitions that have been happening there since 1981. Every day, Ivan's 20 workers make around 400 statues from a mix of powdered stone and synthetic resins renowned for their resistance to all weathers. In the 2 decades he has been making them, Perutina told AFP that he has heard of some things that were out of the ordinary, like the clients in Portugal who reported that a statuette smelled of roses and lavender, even though we had not added anything to it, he insisted. The little statues are solid, so nothing can be put inside them, a worker explained. Asked if there was any way in which they could be tampered with, he replied, "Oh no, God preserve us from that." So no tinkering from the creators of these things, allegedly. So just kind of another.
I've heard of one of those before where they said it weep wine or something. I don't even remember where I read that one.
That'd be a fun statue to have.
I know, yeah.
But yeah, the Marian apparitions. Let's see, there was Medjugorje, there was Lourdes, there was Fatima. So there's a whole bunch of these things. Maybe we'll dedicate another show segment in the future to exploring those things, because there's one of them where the people, like, forget how many thousands of people saw the sun stop in the sky and move, like it moved around the sky, and everybody was there to witness it. And there's pictures of this day, like it's happened within the advent of photography. So that's just really cool to think about and to research. And yeah, I'm sure we'll get into more of that later. And plus, speaking of the female archetype, and moon could be a Mary, right? Virgin, moon, mother. So it's very fitting for the silver segment anyway, I believe. And in the true spirit of last minute synchronicities, as I was flipping through the Neville Goddard book for the Sabbath reading, the first page I opened or I flipped to earlier today was about the Annunciation, which is what I think we'll be doing this time, and we'll save the Sabbath for Ben when he joins us next time. But before we move on to the sword segment, and I read for about 2 pages, not super long. It's not even 2 pages, it's like a page and a half. Did you guys have anything that you wanted to share in particular for the silver segment? I know Adam shared an article already, but did maybe Derek, you want to give updates on what's going on at the store or the website or anything new business-ish related like before we move on?
No, I didn't have anything for the silver segment. No, I've just the only thing regarding the website I'd say is I've done a lot of updates on the shungite beehives, and saving the bees is important to us. So for those that are interested, there's a lot of updates and some more information available there. But no, I appreciate that.
I wanted to ask you about that because I would like to keep bees, but because of being in the woods and not really having a field, is that this is probably not a prime spot for bees? And then I guess a follow-up question would I have to mail them out every winter?
You can keep bees anywhere. You can keep them in the middle of a city. They're going to find pollen and nectar, and they'll go 7 miles just to get a water source. So you don't have to, they're not going to stay locally unless there's enough there. But you can even keep mason bees or carpenter bees, which don't, provide honey, and they're small little bird house size hives that you can just nail to your back fence. So that's another way to help save the bees and pollinate and stuff. So you don't have to go through the other efforts of harvesting honey and things like that. Well, I didn't quite understand the last question you asked.
Like, so if I had a hive and it gets cold here and winter starts, like some people will mail off their hive for the winter to a warmer climate and they'll have it mailed back to them. Is that, or am I misunderstanding that process?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they try and box their colony, but that they're gonna no, I wouldn't think they do that. What they could do is maybe wrap it, put it on a truck, and drive it somewhere. That's a thing. They wouldn't necessarily mail it, but even that, if they took the bees out, well, then the brood, the babies inside, are going to die because the bees will keep them warm. So what you really do is, even if it's snow, and I live in the Cascade Mountains. I mean, I've had 5 feet of snow in my hives. You wrap them. There's different hay, for example. You can get straw or hay, wrap it around, keep enough room so they can exit the hive for cleansing flights and things like that during the winter, because that's the only reason they come out to go to the bathroom. And then wrap it with hay, and then you're fine under snow. I mean, just even if it's covered with snow, it'll help insulate them. It's an igloo, but you got to keep an entrance, of course, clear. So no, you don't necessarily have to like send your hives away. If we're talking honeybee hives, and there's a lot of types of bees.
Yeah, honeybees. I would be interested in honeybees, but it's interesting that you mentioned the mason bees because I've seen those and I have one of those mason bee little houses out front, but just this year we got mason wasps. Have you heard of mason wasps before?
No.
Or potter wasps?
I haven't.
I'll take a picture of this hive I have out back. It's pretty gnarly, but it starts out as just one little pod and it's got a long neck where there's, and then the egg is inside, but it's just one little dude, right? And then as it grows and hatches throughout the year, this thing has expanded and is pretty much wrapped around the trunk of a red pine out back. But yeah, they're wasps. They're black and white, and they kind of have their hive set up like mason bees would, where they put all their eggs and the larva back in it and then separates it with little walls and stuff. But they're totally not territorial. They don't defend their hive. They're not aggressive. And like I could literally reach out and touch the hive if I wanted to from my porch, but I don't. Obviously, I don't want to disturb them. But yeah, I didn't know that mason wasps were a thing until this year.
No, I've never heard of them.
Yeah, I just learned today that the smallest insects in the world are wasps that are like 0.3 or 0.6 of a millimeter and fly using these weird, like, long tail. Yeah, wasps are cool, man. And these ones I was looking at were parasitic.
Ooh, sounds nasty. I saw a giant wasp. I was at the beach. I was coming back from the beach, actually. We were on the trail on the other side of the back side of the dune, and this wasp was taking out a cicada. This was like, it was probably almost as big as my pinky finger. Like the wasp was, right? And the cicada was even bigger. But that thing was scary looking. Enough of this wasp talk. Let's move on to the sword segment. And as I mentioned before, swords kind of allude to the air and thinking, at least in terms of if you're talking tarot correspondences, and how also alludes to so words like swords, words do a little word magic, word play there. You get both, and just like a sword can be used for harming or helping in a task, so can our words. And this also translates to our thoughts, because what comes before words are thoughts, and this also translates to how we talk to ourselves, right? Not just others, because how we perceive ourselves is going to impact how we interact with the world and how we perceive others. So this is meant to be a little encouragement for the week, for us, for me, for you, for whoever wants to partake. So this is actually from the same excuse me, the same publication as last week, called Freedom for All by Neville Goddard, and it was written in 1942. The Annunciation. The use of a friend's voice to impregnate oneself with a desirable state is beautifully told in the story of the Annunciation. It is recorded that God sent an angel to Mary to announce the birth of his son. And the angel said unto her, Thou shalt receive in thy womb and bring forth a son. Then said Mary unto the angel, How can this be, seeing I know not a man? And the angel answered and said unto her, The Holy Ghost shall come upon thee, and the power of the highest shall overshadow thee. Therefore also that holy thing which shall be born of thee shall be called the Son of God. For with God nothing shall be impossible. That's Luke chapter 1, verse 30 through 37. Neville goes on, This is the story that has been told for centuries the world over, but man was not told that it was written about himself, so he has failed to receive the benefit that it was intended to give him. The story reveals the method by which the idea or word was made flesh. God, we are told, germinated or begat an idea, a son, without the aid of another. He then placed his germinal idea in the womb of Mary with the help of an angel, who made the announcement to her and impregnated her with the idea. No simpler method was ever recorded of consciousness impregnating itself than is found in the story of the Annunciation. The four characters of this drama of creation are the Father, the Son, Mary, and the angel. The Father symbolizes your consciousness. The Son symbolizes your desire. Mary symbolizes your receptive attitude of mind. And the angel symbolizes the method used to make the impregnation. The drama unfolds in this manner. The Father begets a Son without the aid of another. You define your objective. You clarify your desire without the help or suggestion of another. Then the Father selects that angel who is best qualified to bear this message or germinal possibility to Mary. You select the person in your world who would be sincerely thrilled in witnessing the fulfillment of your desire. Then Mary learns through the angel that she has already conceived a son without the aid of a man. You assume your receptive attitude of mind, a listening attitude, and imagine you are hearing the voice of the one you have chosen to tell you what you desire to know. Imagine that you hear him tell you that you are and have that which you desire to be and to have. You remain in this receptive state until you feel the thrill of having heard the good and wonderful news. Then, like Mary of the story, you go about your business in secret, telling no one of this wonderful and immaculate self-impregnation, confident that in due season you will express this impression. The Father generates the seed or germinal possibility of a son, but in a eugenic impression. He does not convey the spermatozoa from himself to the womb. He has it born through another medium. Consciousness, desiring, is the Father generating the seed or idea. A clarified desire is the perfectly formed seed or the only begotten Son. This seed is then carried from the Father, consciousness desiring, to the Mother, consciousness of being and having the state desired. This change in consciousness is accomplished by the angel or imaginary voice of a friend telling you that you have already achieved your objective. The use of an angel or friend's voice to make a conscious impression is the shortest, safest, and surest way to be self-impregnated. With your desire properly defined, you assume an attitude of listening. Imagine you are hearing the voice of a friend. Then make him tell you, imagine he is telling you, how lucky and fortunate you are to have fully realized your desire. In this receptive attitude of mind, you are receiving the message of an angel. You are receiving the impression that you are and have that which you desire to be and to have. The emotional thrill of having heard that which you desire to hear is the moment of conception. It is the moment you become self-impregnated, the moment you actually feel you are now that or have that which heretofore you but desired to be or to possess. As you emerge from this subjective experience, you, like Mary of the story, will know by your changed attitude of mind that you have conceived a son, that you have fixed a definite subjective state, and will in a little while express or objectify this state. This book has been written to show you how to achieve your objectives. Apply the principle expressed herein, and all the inhabitants of the earth cannot stop you from realizing your desires. And that was actually the last little chapter. That was the last chapter of that book, Freedom for All. Imagine that. So it's a little different take on that story than what some other groups would have you believe, and kind of makes it a little bit more digestible and usable, in my opinion, right? So, and it, plus it just goes nicely with that last story about the weeping statue, and fits in very synchronistically with how the show ended up going this time. So yeah, Neville's basically just making another pointing out how this is another story in the Bible, which explains how to use these, I don't want to call them psychological tricks, but just different methods, different ways of explaining the same thing, which is basically that feeling is the secret, which is the name of his book that he published right after this one, and how to get into that feeling mode and how it helps us manifest what we would like to see reflected in our outer world. And of course, that first has to start within us, right? Which is what he's talking about, being self-impregnated. So,
boy, Neville's writings are some of those worth like rereading many times because you're going to get a deeper understanding from them. Probably every time.
100%. I try to slow down during the readings so people can digest as we go along. But yeah, definitely go back and re-listen to these episodes, these readings if you want to, or pick up the book. I highly recommend any of his works. But yeah, I enjoy preparing these on the weekly basis, at least as long as we're doing Neville. And I'm sure that we'll move on to other things eventually. But yeah, the more times that you read Neville, the more it clicks and the more you want to put it into practice. At least that's how I found what I found anyway, in my case. And that'll do it for the sword segment. But before we go, I did want to remind everybody to head on over to mysticalwares.com and sign up for the free weekly scalar energy session. I have done so already, and I saw that this week we will be working on micronutrient supplementation. And for anybody that is not familiar with what I'm talking about right now, Derek has a machine in, well, maybe I'll just let Derek explain it. You probably do a better job than me, but it's based off of the Rife frequencies, right? Isn't that right, Derek? Royal Raymond Rife and his work with the
exactly. Yeah, those are the codes that we use for each of the different weeks sessions through the scalar machine. And we did, as I mentioned earlier, expand the website recently. So there's a larger description, and it'd take a large amount of time to go over that right now. But it is on the website under the scalar energy tab that explains the device that we're using to generate the scalar waves.
It's super easy to sign up, guys. You're basically just giving him your name and email address, and it gets put in between these the two parts of the machine, right? And that is how we are quantumly entangled and connected. You will receive the benefits of whatever the frequency is used for that week, right? And I do believe that this is picked based off of group feedback, right, Derek? Depends. Like last week was overall well-being. This week is something different, right? These are based off of.
Yeah, we'll vary it from different requests we get and things like that. So, like I think, like you said, this one's micronutrient supplementation. That's like, what the heck is that? So we describe more of that on the website, but it does vary. And then I'm going to start expanding the different, codes that we have that we input in the frequency or into the scalar waveform. So that'll vary here in the near future.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, like I said, everybody go and sign up. It's free. See if you can sign up for the text or the email reminders so you'll get a notification of when it exactly starts for your time zone, and sit back and just notice what happens, and maybe write into the show and see if you notice anything weird happening or anything different. I want to hear about it. And besides that, please do share the show if you like what we're doing here. Please help spread the love any way that you can. Rate the show, rate it on whatever platform you're using, even if you don't like what we're doing. Just getting those reviews in does help the show reach other listeners. And until next time, Carnonauts, Carpe Diem.